She took her own life. I didn't know her well, but other people in my school did. I was in the car when they called her a slut. That's all I ever heard about her. She told her date she wouldn't be able to make it to prom, and by the time he had called her dad to tell him something seemed off, it was too late. She hung herself on April 21st, 2019, and died days later in the hospital when tests for brain activity came back negative. Her story shook hundreds, and it brought to the spotlight the idea that we need to be more understanding of other people's needs and situations. We lack empathy. Today's speech, I'll go over the causes of this lack of empathy, the effects this lack of empathy has on our society, and what you can do to help. You never know when someone is suffering. When you use empathy, you could be the reason someone decides to live. I wish I was there to tell her that her life was worth living, but in reality, I was part of the problem. And yes, I didn't know her well, but people like my sister have gone through similar things where they find themselves in such a dark hole, and the effects it has on them are drastic. First, I want to go over the causes of our lack of empathy and how it's due to our human nature and our generational traits. Then I'll talk about the effects and how it leads to bullying and outward violence. And lastly, I'll show what you can do through your face-to-face and screen-to-screen communication to fix this problem. First, we'll go over the causes. We lack empathy because of our human nature and our generational traits. The fact we lack empathy can be proven by Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Charles Darwin was a scientist that discovered natural selection. The Philippine Star in 2019 defines natural selection as the preservation of specific helpful traits over generations that allow humans and other creatures to better compete for survival. In other words, our systems are hardwired to compete against others to live. In today's society, this could easily come across in the form of hate or harm to boost one's ego or self-esteem. This is backed by a study done by the Australian Associated Press in 2018. They took 46,000 participants and had each person fill out a self-reported empathy survey and took a saliva sample of each person. The results came back showing that 10% of the differences in empathy levels between people was due to genetics. But what about the other 90%? The fact we lack empathy is also due to our generational traits. Social media is a huge part of how we communicate, and it's also what causes us to lack empathy. In our brain, empathy is created when our mirror neurons are activated. So what are mirror neurons? A report done by Karen Jones in 2011 defines our mirror neurons as a cell network that, when activated, involuntarily causes humans to reenact an old personal experience based on the situation they see happening in front of them. For example, if you see two people fighting, their voice tones and their facial expressions activate your mirror neurons. So you feel what they feel based on experience you've had in the past, like maybe you and your friend are fighting. A sociologist at the University of Nairobh agrees with this when he says the lack of empathy today is because of the violent content we see on social media, according to Stanton in 2016. Our generation is actually not behind a screen. We are the ones that lack empathy. The University of Michigan did a study that shows college students lack empathy by more than 40% of any other age group, according to Greer in 2010. Now you see the causes of our lack of empathy. Let's go over the effects it has. Our lack of empathy causes bullying and outward violence. When we lack empathy, we fail to see when someone is suffering. Hopelessness is one of the main reasons people commit suicide, according to Rackman in 2019. When we lack hope, it means we're full of hate, fear, and discouragement, which can be a lot of pain for one person to have to go through. The World Health Organization in 2019 put out a study that shows one person kills themselves every 40 seconds. And it's one of the leading causes of death in people of the ages 15 through 29. Now, if you think about it, 15 through 29 largely encompass college students. So the generation that is lacking the most amount of empathy is also having one of the greatest death tolls because of suicide. And not only that, but if you do the math and one person dies every 40 seconds, that means 90 people die in a day, 2,160 people die in a week, and over 500,000 people die in a year based on suicide alone. I don't know about you, but to me, that is not okay. and it's not even the worst of it. Our lack of empathy also causes outward violence. When we lack empathy, we fail to see other perspectives and we judge. We judge based on people's sexuality, their race, their religion, and so many other things. Hate crimes are a huge problem in America. The San Diego Union Tribune in 2019 gives us some examples of this, when it says that in 2017, a gay couple was assaulted at a grocery store when they were kicked, punched, and got rocks thrown at them just for shopping there. And in 2018, a white woman assaulted her African-American Uber driver by kicking him in the back of the head while saying racist comments. And later that same year, another white woman vandalized her Hispanic neighbor's house by throwing rocks through his window and telling him to go back to Mexico. When did that become okay? When did hurting people because they are different become acceptable? Our lack of empathy is not only causing us to hurt ourselves, it's causing us to hurt other people. So now we've talked about the effects, let's see what you can do to help. There is so much you can do through your face-to-face and screen-to-screen communication to fix this problem. However, showing empathy through our face-to-face communication is very difficult because our generation is so used to sharing our thoughts and feelings through Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. To show empathy, you have to know what empathy is. Empathy is not sympathy or pity. Empathy is feeling what someone else feels and cognitively processing it as an experience, according to Jones in 2011. So based on that definition, if you know your capacity for empathy is low, strive to show sympathy first. Sympathy initially takes us attention, focus, and energy, also according to Jones in 2011. This can be simple things like thinking before you speak, or noticing when someone's hurting and attempting to help. Fixing this problem through our screen-to-screen communication is a lot simpler, because what you post is all up to you. Before you post something, think about, is my post targeting a certain person in a rude way? Is my post targeting a group of people in a condescending manner? Or is my post simply there to boost my ego by putting someone else's down? Showing empathy is so important. And what you say through your social media accounts reflects how much empathy you show in your life. In today's speech, I went over the causes of our lack of empathy and how it's due to our human nature and our generational traits. Then I went over the effects and how it leads to bullying and outward violence. And lastly, I showed what you can do to help through your face-to-face and screen-to-screen communication. I wish I could tell you that on April 21st, 2019, she had decided that her life was worth living. But she didn't. And her story mimics what so many other people will do in the future. Take part in Missouri State's pillar of community engagement. Be the reason someone decides to live. And help others show empathy in their life. Thank you.